What is up, everybody? Happy early Memorial Day weekend. Hope it's a great weekend ahead for all of you. And always got to remember what Memorial Day is about. Servicemen, servicewomen, first responders, everybody who has served. So thank you to all of you who fall into those categories, rather. I'm Anthony Cosenza. He is John Sheeran, and he is gracing us with his presence, because he is on his way to a Reds game in just a little bit. Who do they take on? I should know this. Who do they take on tonight, John?
You think you should know this? I think I should know this. I don't even know. I know they played a lot of
That's
West
why we're
Coast
not a Red
teams.
show. That's why we're not a Red show.
They were just out on the West Coast. I think I saw them beat the Dodgers, and then I think they lost the other games to the Dodgers.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Dodgers might be back in town. They were playing the Padres early. I think it's some team out west. Someone in the comments section can let me know. It doesn't matter for me personally if the Reds are good or not, because I'm not that big of a fan. But also, I think my career record for going to Reds games is something like 15-2. So I'd be like a first round bye, if we want to equate this to football terms. So whether or not they're good or not, like they typically do well when I'm there. So hoping for a win tonight.
I feel like my record when I go to Angels games out my way is like the exact opposite of that. And even when they had like Shohei and Trout together and all that, I'm like, man, I feel like I don't get to watch a lot of W's from the Halos there. But that's I am going to a game this weekend. My oldest son gets to cruise around the old ballpark, and we're going to catch a game, so that'll be fun. But anyway, happy Memorial Day weekend, early Memorial Day weekend to everybody. He is John, I am Anthony, and this is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, now part of the Believe Network, the Believe in Cincy podcast channel. You got to go check out Believe in Cincy. Go to the Believe Network. Go on Apple Podcasts, type in Believe and Believe in Cincy. Go resubscribe to our audio feed. That way you can get our show. You can get Talking Football with Bengal Jim and Friends. You can get, it is official now, Coach Matt Minnick and Willie. Matt and Willie No Ball, I believe, is the title of their new show. So Willie Lutz in the fold. We love having him on the program, and of course 3 and Out from Jason and Kevin doing great stuff. It's been a little bit since we've taken the air, because the last time we took the air, where there was a lot of news, but we're trying to get you content almost every single day of the week. We had a recent interview. Jason Garrison talked to Sam Hubbard, and we're going to start lining up some special guests, particularly because the Ring of Honor was just kind of re-announced and some nominees were put out there. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit, by the way. So we're trying to get you all kinds of different content on the Believe in Cincy channel. We appreciate you resubscribing. We appreciate all the support you can go get on the audio side. Subscribe through the Apple Podcast, Believe in Cincy. It's on some other platforms as well, the Believe in Cincy channel. You can join the live feeds on Cincy Jungle's Facebook page. Give a thumbs up to that with about close to 90,000 people there. You can join us on our YouTube channel, and by doing so, you can get to that channel underneath John at the Cincy Jungle icon at the bottom of your screen there, the Orange and Black Insider show icons down there. Click that, click the subscribe button, click the bell to be notified when we go live, when new content is available. Give us a thumbs up on that channel if you would. That would be fantastic. And of course, a lot of you are watching us. We've been getting a lot more viewers through Twitter/X on various accounts. So you can catch us on my account and Cincy Jungle's account, the podcast show account. We got to link up John's account. He's the guy with all the followers. So we got to link him up to shoot that out on the live broadcast. But anyway, we appreciate you tuning in on the cusp of a holiday weekend, and not the busiest part of the NFL schedule or Bengals news-wise, but still some things to talk about and some things to yammer on about as it goes with those boys in orange and black. And by the way, John, I believe as we sit here today, happy birthday to the Cincinnati Bengals. They were, they were born on this. The team was conceived on this date. Paul Brown getting the Cincinnati franchise and coming up with the Cincinnati Bengals and getting that orange and black color scheme to just stick it to the Cleveland Browns.
Are they technically Gen X? They were what 1967s? So they were just past. They're not boomers technically. I think they're in that generation or whatnot. But that's what, like 57 years this year, I think, or I guess 56 considering they started playing in 68. But as you said, they were conceived in 1967. It is cool seeing like that. It was like an old picture. I think most Bengals fans know what it is, but it's like Paul Brown holding up like the rejected or the unaccepted.
Yeah, the different helmets. Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and like I mean, they were kind of there was like one with like it was a bee, but it like had like some either teeth or like some stripes out of the end or something like that. They were kind of ahead of the game with the helmet game, but it's cool seeing some of that lore. And yeah, happy birthday to the Bengals.
Yeah, ahead of the game has always kind of been, in a lot of ways. I mean, it seems so contradictory because there were times when the Bengals seemed so behind the times in the ways they operated. But I mean, the way that they had, the person spearheading the Cincinnati Bengals, Paul Brown, was always known as an innovator, a guy. He was the guy that had the started the radio and the helmets, and he was the guy who I think invented face masks and all kinds of different innovations. Really kind of propelled the forward passing game in the NFL, did Paul Brown. So, I mean, a lot of different things that this team revolutionized and Paul Brown revolutionized. And so when you think about that image of Paul Brown, kind of holding up all the different helmets and stuff, I mean, they were kind of getting creative and wonky with the creations, the jersey creations, the logo creations, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, happy birthday to the Bengals, and we're going to kick off our show and their birthday. You don't want me singing happy birthday. That's going to be pretty awful on the air here. So what we're going to do is just kind of catch up on some news. Now, when we last took the air, because we took the air a couple of times on the schedule release date and then took a little brief hiatus and still coming at you every week here. We'll ramp that up as more stuff comes down the pike. But Trey Hendrickson came back to practice. A little bit of a surprise given some of the weird, I don't know if weird's the right word, but I guess unexpected news that he was disgruntled with his contract situation. But John, I don't think we talked about this much because we were obsessed with the schedule, and this just like occurred like the day after maybe, or same day as the schedule type of thing. But he's back at practice. He has a really strong, good attitude about things. I mean, yeah, he still wants a new contract. He wants to get paid well. I mean, dude absolutely destroyed statistics last year. And, he wants to get paid as one of the best pass rushers in the league. And the Bengals rewarded him with an extension, a 1-year extension last year. Still wants more, but still came back to workouts, off-season workouts, and is saying and doing the right things, wants to help the team win a Super Bowl. So Trey Hendrickson back practicing with the team and, assuming that leadership mantle.
Yeah, I think when it comes to these types of disputes and maybe potential holdouts, or I guess in some cases actual holdouts, it really is just up to the players for like how they want to handle it. And then I think a lot of people can understand if a player wants to preserve his health in the sense of wanting more long-term security and not wanting to put his body on the line in non-game situations, because obviously every player is going to play because that's how they actually earn the salaries that they signed up for. And Trey Hendrickson is at a point in his career where he can't necessarily recuperate the money he would lose at like 29, 30 years old. I think in general, though, it's like there's a weird balance of we know most of what's going on, but there's also a lot of things that we don't know. I think something that was alluded or reported by ESPN's Jeremy Fowler not too long ago is that the Bengals and Hendrickson were going to meet after the draft. I think it was James Rapine who noted that Hendrickson and Mike Brown were talking and having like a very intimate conversation before a practice earlier this week. So it's alluded that both sides are on good and equal footing and good terms enough for Hendrickson to just be comfortable practicing with the rest of the team. And he talked about it last week, I think, when he first reappeared to reporters and saying like, this is a team game, and a lot of my production and success and my earnings up to this point is because of the quality of talent around me and just the overall quality of the team and the defense. And it's my responsibility to kind of carry that way. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he took a very high road approach. But at the same time, it's not as if like his stance has changed like regardless. Like he still, I think, wants to be compensated in a different way, and I still don't think that like he's totally comfortable with the money that he's going to going to be making, but it is in his best interest, obviously, to have the best possible season and have the best possible 2 seasons, I guess, if he's under contract for 2 more years, to make sure that the next time he does get paid, it is what he wants, and whether that is or that isn't with the Bengals remains to be seen. But I think this is the approach that he's taking, and he's practicing with the team, and like he's good with ownership and everything like that. So there's no like animosity, or there's no threat or possibility of like things necessarily going south anytime soon. But I think it still stands that he feels like he deserves a little bit more, and this is his route in terms of getting that in the future.
This is where the Bengals have to be really careful with things in terms of, I mean, look, Hendrickson's now late 20s, I think, right now. So
he's turning 30 this year, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say 29. Yeah, so the Bengals kind of get cautious about paying long-term deals or putting out long-term deals when the big 3-0 hits on some of these players. And more often than not, I think they're kind of right. Father time catches up with some of these players, and then you pay, and they've often been slow of cutting loose some players that didn't perform to the back end years of their contracts. We've seen that a number of times, particularly in the Marvin Lewis era. We saw that, but there are some anomalies, and the Bengals have made a couple of misses or miscalculations that ended up being misses. And Andrew Whitworth's the most glaring example, where the guy still played close to 40 at a high level, and the Bengals just said, "Hey, man, he's up there in age, and we're kind of going younger and cheaper and moving on a little bit," and that really bit them and set them back for a long time. The Bengals have had really good pass rushers in their tenure, but Trey Hendrickson is shaping up to be the best that they have had consistently. And so when he's getting in there into 30s, the Bengals are probably going, well, man, we really love the production and everything that he has produced for us and what he has done. We have to keep an eye on the age. We have to make sure, especially now with a huge quarterback contract on the books, we have to manage things across the board a little more tightly. But you don't want to have to, if Hendrickson, and I tend to think he is kind of that Whitworth type of guy, especially if the Bengals can get him some additional help and manage his snaps these next couple of years a little bit better. I think he can be that Whitworth guy, highly producing well into his 30s. But the Bengals need to weigh everything with that, because they've been down this road before.
Right. And I think it's pretty clear at this point that he is by far like the best free agent signing in team history.
Ever.
I don't think that's up for debate.
Outside. Yeah.
Like particularly like signing from another team, and the competition, at least before he was signed, wasn't too fierce because they never really did that. But I think the way that he's kind of handled it with grace and coming back and just talking everything out with a candid and open heart has been really refreshing to see. And you really get a glance at his perspective, because that's all, like, at the end of the day, the team is not going to make a lot of like engaging or eye-opening statements regarding these things. We only hear from Mike Brown once a year. We only hear from Katie Blackburn like once or twice a year. And usually the answers regarding these questions, again, like there's not a lot of substance to it. So to hear, at least from his perspective, what's going on, the fact that he doesn't have any regrets with how last year's negotiation with the 1-year deal went down, but there's still this thing that's kind of inside of him in terms of like, I feel like I deserve more. It was very refreshing to hear. And it was also just the case of, I mean, when this first happened, when the trade request kind of came out of nowhere, like the vitriol and the animosity from a lot of people about Trey, who's done nothing but handle things the right way in his time in Cincinnati, it was eye-opening. It sucked to see, because he's been a phenomenal teammate and a phenomenal piece of that locker room, who's played through a lot of injury. I remember he just hyperextended his knee on like a Sunday, like week 12, and then he ended up playing that Thursday against the Ravens. Like, he's fought nail and tooth, and like you said, with very little time on the bench because of just the lack of depth at that position. So he's done everything to earn everything that he deserves, and I definitely see his point of view in all this. And like you said, the team has to make a decision eventually about it, and I think the 1-year extension was smart on them, considering he had outplayed that contract and it gave him a raise. But if he thinks he still deserves more, I totally understand that. But sometimes it's just how these things go. The team sees it one way, the player sees it the other way, and it just kind of ends when it ends in terms of when the contract expires.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out, but at least with the onslaught of kind of some wow negative news in a handful of days between the T Higgins, give me a long term deal or trade me, and then this kind of a similar deal with Trey Hendrickson. It's good to see that this one played is playing out a little differently. John, last 3 seasons with the Bengals from 21 through 23. 39 and a half sacks, man. 14 sacks his first year, 8 sacks, a bit of a dip the 22 season, but the team still made the AFC Championship that year, and then 17 and a half last year. So dude is just playing ridiculous football. My favorite, I mean, there's been so many awesome moments from him, particularly with 17 and a half sacks last year, but I still, the image always of Trey Hendrickson to me is in 21 when he's on the bench in I think it's Tennessee, and he's just where they, or maybe no, it's Kansas City when they're going to the Super Bowl, I think. And he's like sitting there and he's exhausted. You can tell he's just sitting there, and he kind of just like when McPherson kicks the ball and he kind of does this sigh/smile laugh, and almost was he getting emotional? It's like a myriad of emotions that they just caught briefly of him on the bench, and so I always kind of remember that, but. Anyway, great player, great acquisition for the team, and good to see that this is kind of at least going in a more positive direction. I'm sure both teams will kind of be talking about some things, but again, this is something that the team needs to weigh and look at it. Hey, is this the Andrew Whitworth situation where this guy's got a lot more years in the tank, or maybe we're just going to kind of. And if you remember at the end of I believe with Whitworth, they kind of did these mini extensions, the same thing. Remember, they would kind of tack on another year, and then it just kind of fizzled out from there. So I wonder if that's going to kind of be maybe a little bit of the same MO, because they paid, I believe, if memory serves, they had paid Andy Dalton a pretty handsome sum towards the end of Whitworth's Bengal career as well, because Dalton had outdone his rookie contract.
Yeah, I mean, they signed Dalton to like a 6-year deal at the end of his rookie season. Obviously, with Whitworth, the only reason that 1-year deal came to be was because he wrote a letter to Mike Brown saying, I'm going to retire because you drafted 2 tackles who didn't end up being good at all. So that 1-year deal, I think, was like an emergency type situation from the Blackburns and everything. So that's how that came to be. And I don't think it was the exact same situation which resulted in the Hendrickson 1-year deal. It was kind of like a compromise between, hey, like the player wants multiple years, the team still wants him to be around, but not for that long. So let's just give him a 1-year deal and see how he kind of goes from here. And yeah, that's the timeline, right? Like there's nothing was going to happen here until at least another year, because that's when Hendrickson would be in another contract year. So that's probably how this whole thing is going to play out.
Yeah, Mr. Whisper tends to think that he will beat Father Time. Will Trey Hendrickson? We will see. We hope so. Saying there is a business part of this, but part of me says Trey's the kind of guy that'll seek to destroy the quote age stigma in football if he's extended, and I think he feels the same way. But we will see how that all happens. And thank you for the super chat donation, Mr. Whisper. As always, man, oh man, you are Mr. Generosity. But the other news, a couple other little tidbits. One, we don't have to belabor this. T. Higgins remains the only player in the NFL on a franchise tag designation that has not signed the contract, and he has not been at OTAs. So not really surprising based on how this has gone, but no real positive updates in the form of Trey Hendrickson on this one, John. But he's working out on his own from what we understand, and keeping up what he needs to do. He has been putting out some other things on social media too, talking about kind of his clips as a Bengal and that sort of thing. So I mean, there's not some absolute negative stuff coming from that whole situation, but no progress.
Right. I mean, and I think Jamar Chase is still away from the team as well. Like he's on his own workout thing. Mm-hmm. I think Trent Brown. Yep. I don't think we've seen him at offseason workouts. We'll see if Chase and Brown are there for OTAs and leading up to mandatory minicamp. But yeah, I mean it's the Jesse Bates thing, right? It's just Bates wasn't present for the entirety of the offseason until I think it was like week 3 of the preseason when he showed up in one of the players' suites watching a preseason game. So that's probably what is expected with T at this point. He's still doing stuff. He's still maintaining football shape and getting in work, but it's on his own time and he's doing it at his own risk. And if he's going to suffer some type of minor ailment or anything, it's not going to be on the company time when he's not too happy with his contract situation. But obviously he doesn't get paid until he shows up and plays actual football, which is still going to be the case here. So that's the status quo. It's like you said, there's not a lot that we can add to it, but until he doesn't report, it's still going to be a story from at least the national news.
Well, one of the guys that where a lot of eyes have been on is rookie Jermaine Burton, showing off, some. I mean, it's shirts and shorts and kind of, running things. It appears maybe 75 to 85% speed, not full speed, but getting kind of the rhythm, the timing, the touch, that sort of thing. And Burton has been learning nuances from Burrow in terms of his preferences on, hey, on this route, this is kind of where I'd like you to be. This is the timing. And you see a lot of them kind of exchanging words in a good way, not exchanging words like in an argumentative way, but just kind of a little bit of coaching up from Burrow, and some, you see the nice little highlight reel plays as well from Burrow kind of throwing the deep balls to him. And that's the element that the Bengals want from Burton, and out of that slot position with the departure of Tyler Boyd, they want the big plays. They want the deep balls coming from that spot as well as from Chase, Higgins, etc. And you can see even in spring workouts that they're trying to get that going. And again, Burton's kind of playing a little bit everywhere, it seems, because Chase is gone, because Higgins isn't there, but they're trying to work that deep ball, and he and Burrow are trying to, get on the same page and hit the ground running.
Yeah, it seems like 90% of the throws we're seeing from Burrow, at least posted on social media, are very similar reps that he took this time last year when they were trying to install more under center play action, deep rollouts and deep crossers and deep vertical concepts out of those play calls and whatnot. And that was supposed to be the emphasis, obviously, until he suffered a calf strain and couldn't physically do that. So yeah, we've seen, Burton really stretch the field against air at this point, but getting under those deep passes and all the passes have been accurate, like right on the spot. So getting that timing down is obviously very important. And obviously he was going to be a beneficiary without the top two receivers out there. It's hard to say where he is in terms of the pecking order of getting these reps, because you would have to think that Irwin and Yoshivas and Charlie Jones, like those guys are still, well established in the structure of the offense, and Burton is still a rookie, trying to earn his place. But obviously one of the three most talented players at that position on the roster, and just getting enough reps and developing chemistry and timing with Burrow is the most important thing. And I think the clip that you were referring to about him talking with Burton, it was talking about coming out of his break, maybe selling the route towards the inside so you can break off to the outside, gain even more separation. Like Burton, obviously phenomenal athlete, really explosive off the line, in and out of his breaks and everything. Him being a more refined route runner can really unlock the full skill set. And I think that is what they're trying to develop him the most, at least in the early part of this, because Burrow is such a timing player in terms of like the anticipation on his throws, and he always plays on time, and like the ball's never late, and that's why he avoids a lot of bad passes and incompletions. And if you as a receiver don't have that timing to your routes, like you're not going to get the ball. Like it's very easy to lose Burrow's trust. So to see that relationship and that irony now happen so quickly, I mean, rookie minicamp was like 2 weeks ago, and Burrow's already in Burton's head about, I want you here, like I want you to break off the route at this point. I want you to sell a little bit more to the inside and use your leverage against cornerbacks like that. If they can unlock that with Jermaine Burton, on top of the athleticism that he provides, he can be a more dangerous immediate option as a rookie for sure.
Yeah, and T. Martin here says, I didn't want to give the wrong impression of what I was saying here, but I don't think he's going to be a full-time slot. Burton, I think they're going to use him there to try and get more big play, and also, I mean, you're going to have Chase on the outside. They'll move Chase inside as well. T. Higgins plays outside and inside too, so I think there's going to be a lot of interchanging. But I think my point is they just want a little bit more of those deep plays, those long balls, those long air yardage plays out of the slot. And I think Burton in the fold allows you to have that flexibility and interchangeability a bit with those different players.
100%. There's no longer like a full-time slot receiver. I think Tyler Boyd led the NFL in like slot only snaps last year, and that's no longer part of the offense. So the idea that any one of these receivers are going to be like the true Tyler Boyd replacement, I think is unfounded, especially because Mike Gesicki essentially is a big slot, and he'll see plenty of time there. I think it was Burton's first year at Alabama. I think it was 2022. He was more in the slot compared to 2023 when he was probably a little bit more productive and more of a feature of the offense. So he at least has experience with the route tree that comes with that alignment, but also the best receivers in the NFL, they are their most productive selves in the slot in that alignment. Like Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, like you talk about like A1 receivers, you put them inside and their yards per route run is significantly higher than they are on the outside because you get more favorable matchups, which is what they want with Jamar Chase. Like just having 3 receivers on the field with Chase in the slot and not having to worry about who's on the boundary, if they can threaten cornerbacks with their explosion and their verticality, that is so crucial because that has not been in the offense. And we're kind of like a broken record at this point. It's the whole reason why they took Jermaine Burton in the first place. But putting Chase in the slot and having Burton on the outside, not having to worry about is there enough explosion, our cornerback's going to be kept honest with that. That is so huge and is so important to what they want to do.
Well, that's kind of the news updates and sights and sounds of things as it pertains to the Cincinnati Bengals. So we are going to move on here and talk a little Ring of Honor. Now, we talked about this because early in the spring, and obviously there's been the reemergence of Corey Dillon and reintegration of Corey Dillon into the Bengals fan base, and we're going to try and hopefully see if we can get him on. That'd be great if he'd be willing to come on our show. I know he made an appearance along with Ickey Woods and some other players at a recent golf tournament, the old Jackpot Joey. I know our boy Strawberry Ice and some others are they spearheaded that, and I guess they raised some good money for Joe Burrow's foundation. So that's pretty awesome. But that being said, we've kind of talked about some of the guys that we think, hey, who would we vote for, and that sort of thing. I kind of want to readdress this because the Bengals put out kind of their official short list this last week of the players on the list. And so, we right now, and correct me if you disagree, John, and here's the list here, the nominees. You can see they are listed as such: Crumry, Jim Breach, Dave Lapham, James Brooks, Max Montoya, Chris Collinsworth, Lamar Parrish, Corey Dillon, Bob Trumpy, David Fulcher, and Mr. Bengal himself, Reggie Williams, who played in both Super Bowls in the 1980s. So a lot, all deserving and in various capacities. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if you disagree with me here. It seems as if the consensus, at least among the fan bases, that feel that the next 2 to get in would be Corey Dillon and probably Lamar Parrish. It seems that those are kind of the most, and some people some season tickets have shared their votes. I think when you and I talked about that we kind of felt like those are at least a couple of the favorites. But what do you, I mean, in that respect, in terms of the favorites to get in, is that where your head's at this point too, or do you see someone else?
No, I think it makes perfect sense for both those guys to get in this year. I think I've said it on the show before. I'm of the opinion that if you can go a modern-ish candidate along with a one of the like original guys who played in the 70s, if you can get them in both in the same year, I think that's a great way of how to do this. And with Chad, Willie, Boomer, Ken, all those guys are already in the offensive staples of the franchise history. I think Dillon definitely fits as like the next in line, arguably the best, maybe not even arguably, he's probably the best running back in team history, and his only competition might be the other running back on this list, James Brooks. But I just think the impact that Dillon had on the team and fans at that time when Jeff Blake and Pickens were fun, but the team won 26 games in his best 6 years, and I think all 26 were probably he was probably the reason why those 26 wins even came about in the first place, averaging 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns on a team against defenses that average 8 guys in the box is nothing short of remarkable, and a borderline Hall of Fame career, which if you ask him, it is a Hall of Fame career. And I think just him putting himself out there, it was like last July where he kind of went off at not at Paul Daniel Jr., but Paul Daniel Jr. called him and basically said, put all this on record. Like it's BS how they do this Ring of Honor. It's BS how the Hall of Fame process and their voting process is. Like, I deserve a lot more respect, and I gained a lot of respect for Corey Dillon like that, just because of a lot of the stuff that he went through as an elite player on a terrible team and having to carry the load at the time. But I would have voted for Lamar Parrish last year just because, again, someone who played in the early 70s, who's now 76 years old. I think we have to do right by those guys and honor them, before it's too late, like it was with Ken Riley. But I mean, he was always kind of in Ken Riley's shadow. Someone who made 6 Pro Bowls in the first 8 years, and such a weapon with the ball in his hands once he intercepted the ball, and even as a return man, like he was so dangerous and so elite. But 6 Pro Bowls in 8 years, like that's legitimately Geno Atkins, AJ Green territory. If he played nowadays, like he would gain that respect. So he may have been lost in time a little bit. And I guess his time with Cincinnati didn't end on like necessarily the best of terms, but he's definitely not alone in that regard. So those would definitely be my 2 votes for sure.
Yeah, and when you look at Parrish too, like you said, it was I think it was the great Jeff Hobson who called him, or someone else called him Deion Sanders before Deion Sanders, right? He was a kick return weapon, punt return weapon. He was good on defense, and a big play machine. Like you said, 6 Pro Bowls. That's a big deal, and a guy that I think is pretty deserving. And it seems like most, as much as we talked about Ken Riley, and deservedly so, great player, great man. Parrish was a guy that those two just teamed up as cornerbacks and just were just a nightmare for other teams. And Riley, the technician, the longevity and everything. Parrish, kind of the big play guy. It was it was quite the duo. Now, in terms of let's say, because sometimes there's maybe the occasional surprise when it comes with some of these things. Who would you say are your dark horses? You can give a couple, or whatever you want to do on that. Who are some of your dark horses that say, let's call Dylan and Parrish the favorites? Who are some of your dark horses to potentially sneak in from? Because here's the deal. I mean, I know a lot of this is fan base, and then some of it is with the team. As you mentioned, both of these guys did not leave. Both the favorites that we're talking about did not leave on great terms with the team. I don't know if and how that will affect the final outcome of this, but that's the truth. I mean, you look at it, you've got a lot of guys who either have Pro Bowls or are team leader. I mean, I think Jim Breach is the team leader in overall points scored, right? In team history. Reggie Williams played, a decade and a half for this team and played at a high level. You've got some Pro Bowls with Collinsworth, Max Montoya. So, I mean, I don't know. Who are a couple of dark horses you're looking at that say, you know what, maybe these guys sneak in this year, in a year where there's appear to be 2 kind of runaway favorites?
I think the 2 that come to mind are Trumpy and Williams. I think because you can make a case that Bob Trumpy is the best tight end in franchise history. I mean, no slouch for him in terms of Pro Bowls. I think he made like 4 in what was like a 8-9 year career there. And, that was the time when, Ken Anderson was starting his career, and he was such a reliable weapon. I'm talking like I actually watched these games. I wasn't even born yet, but, like I see the stats, So, and he's been involved with the team as well. I think he had like an announcing career. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if that was with the Bengals or
he
just
did.
with.
No,
yeah,
it was with, and I think it was with NBC when they first had Sunday day games.
Yeah, so like I think he remains a staple in franchise history, and I think a lot of Bengals fans still remember his impact as a player and as a really solid player for basically his entire time with the team. So he definitely has a place within team history. So he can sneak in. The thing is, like, I mean, season ticket holders, I don't know the average age for them, but I can't imagine that most of them were like, conscious enough in the late 60s and early 70s to remember some of these guys. But it's just like me. Like I know my history with the team, and I think he's got a good place with it. But with Williams, I mean, I just think how long his career was, and the fact that his best year was probably that 1981 season. I mean, 4 interceptions and 11 sacks on your way to going to the Super Bowl. Like, he was one of the more impactful players on that team, and everything that he did outside of being on the team, being on the city council, being a captain, Walter Payton Man of the Year. Like, he did so much more than just be a dominant linebacker for the defense for, like you said, over a decade plus. So I don't think he gets in over a guy like Parrish or Dillon, but I do think he deserves a spot eventually, and it wouldn't surprise me necessarily if it was this year.
Okay, I feel you. And I think there is despite the lack of fanfare, Pro Bowls, all of that, there is a specific case for a player like Reggie Williams, a player and announcer advocate like Dave Lapham that make a lot of sense. I'm going to give you 2, and I'm going to state my case as to why. Uh, I'm going to go first of all, James Brooks. When you, of course, everybody, Corey Dillon, bigger name. He was the star of his team, and Brooks was a little bit of an ancillary player in a way. I mean, he split time with Icky for a year or two there, and there's some things that kind of say, well, he doesn't have the star power necessarily that Corey Dillon had. Corey Dillon made 3 Pro Bowls with the Cincinnati Bengals. James Brooks made 4 Pro Bowls, with the Cincinnati Bengals. James Brooks, yards from scrimmage, 9,459, 9,459 in 8 seasons. Corey Dillon in 7 seasons with Cincinnati, yards from scrimmage, slightly better, 543. Total rushing receiving touchdowns by Corey Dillon in his 7 years in Cincinnati, 50. James Brooks, 8 years in Cincinnati, total rushing receiving touchdowns, 64. Now, again, you look at the overall quality of the teams, and all of that plays into that. Dillon was the focal point, and there just wasn't much offense. Quarterback play to get him involved in the passing game maybe wasn't as highly valued, but Brooks was a extremely, extremely versatile player. And when you look at the players in the Hall of Fame, John, or the Ring of Honor, rather, you're looking at Ken, you're looking at Anthony Munoz, you're looking at really all of these guys were participants in either Super Bowl teams or teams that made playoffs with the Cincinnati Bengals. How much weight does that bear? I don't know. But you're looking at a player who was in one of the best stretches, 88 through early 90s, 91 with James Brooks, one of their best offenses that this team has ever had. Maybe that pushes him, again, 1 more Pro Bowl, again, better team, 14 more touchdowns as a Bengal than Corey Dillon. I don't know. I'm not saying I would go that route. I love me some James Brooks, but I don't know that I would go that route. But there may be an argument and some stats there that point to, hey, maybe that's the running back who gets in.
I think there's also the aspect here of, the season ticket holders have taken it upon themselves, and rightfully so. They've leveraged the Ring of Honor to bring attention to the players that should be in the Hall of Fame. Like, not just like a biased fan, he's one of my favorite players. Like, they should be in the Hall. No, like Ken Anderson, Willie Anderson, Ken Riley before he was inducted. Isaac Curtis even has like a really good case as well. They've utilized that route of just putting these guys in the national spotlight, making sure that they're immortalized, at least on the team level, so that they have, a room to stand on for actually getting into Canton. And I think that's why Dillon and Parrish stand out, because out of these 11 players, like, they probably have the best Hall of Fame cases. We talked about, like, Dillon has the Super Bowl ring. He has the 1,600-yard season, a part of the Patriots dynasty, and of course, one of the top running backs at his peak and produced despite the team being terrible around him. And then Parrish having those accolades in that production at a time where, the passing the ball was still relatively new. So, like, I think that both of those guys have the best cases to be, borderline Hall of Fame players. And I think that kind of goes into a lot of the fans' mindset of, like, hey, like, this team needs more Hall of Fame players. They need to get more guys in Canton. This is a way to do that, which is why I think, it, like you said, it will probably be Dillon Parrish. But I think that's also until like the candidates list is, comprised of guys that may not deserve Hall of Fame status. I think that's still the way that they're going to go, probably, which I support.
Yeah. And Dillon, top 20 in a couple major statistical categories, rushing yards and touchdowns all time in the NFL. So, and every other guy, with the exception of Fred Taylor, in those categories are in the Hall of Fame or will be in the Hall of Fame. So he has a case. There's no doubt about that. The other one I just want to point to a little bit more quickly, Max Montoya, I think has a real strong case. He'll get in there at some point, but he has a really strong case. 4 Pro Bowls, again, helped anchor a line that was just outstanding in the 1980s. And, he and Munoz were absolutely dominant at their respective positions. A long time player in the NFL, went on to the Raiders after the Bengals, but 4 Pro Bowls with the Bengals, and a guy that just was mean, nasty, and a really, really good football player. Not talked about enough, quite honestly. I don't feel, at least not outside of the Bengals bubble.
Really mean, nasty on the field, but really fun to talk to. He was on with Daddy and Hoji and us. I think
Yeah, I remember
it
that.
was during the pandemic, and we were talking, I think, about the lack of Ring of Honor and how, because he finished his career with the Raiders, and of course they have this whole like they've never been shy about their legacy, and that was one of the things he was kept pretty open about, how the last team he was on like remembers him, at least from a team perspective, more than his original team. So I hope he does get in eventually one day, and like you said, he probably will, just so he can be redeemed in that sense and kind of feel like, oh yeah, like my former team does recognize me. I hope he gets that moment for sure.
Yeah, I mean, again, you look at, there's respective cases for all of these guys that make a ton of sense. Collinsworth, productive player during, again, that really high octane offensive era. We talked about Crumry, his leadership, and he came back and coached for the team too. So I mean, there's a long legacy there. So a lot of deserving guys, all deserving guys on this list, and a lot of good arguments to be made for each of them. But right now, it appears that Dillon and Parrish, at least in our eyes, are the front runners. There are a few dark horses that we feel might have a chance to supplant them. We went over that, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But the Ring of Honor game, where they are unveiling the two newest enshrinees, will be the September 23rd home game. That's a Monday nighter, right? Or Sunday nighter? Sunday night.
Monday night against the Commanders.
Monday night. Yeah, against Washington. So yeah, day before my birthday. So maybe I'll get my butt out there for that one. I don't know. But regardless, really cool that we get to finally talk about this kind of stuff over the past couple of years, as opposed to wanting, pleading, and feeling like the team should be going this route. But good to talk about that stuff. Let's move on here to something else. And we are going to talk about some of the new guys, whether they're draft picks, whether they're free agents. There's a lot of exciting. We talked about Jermaine Burton, right? And a lot of exciting players, be it through free agency, be it through the draft, that we feel that could have the highest impact this year. And so we're going to talk about each. Now, John, I want to put this out to you. I'm going to let you decide. Do you want to go one offense, one defense? You want to go one free agent, one rookie? Let's do two apiece. But okay. What do you want to do? Do you want to do offense, defense, or do you want to do new guy, rookie?
Let's do. I'm gonna try to do like all. Right. I'm gonna try to do all four. So I'm gonna try to pick like someone on offense, free agent / rookie. Yeah, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to do all of them, but you can do whatever you want.
Okay. All right. Go for it.
All right. I'm going to say on offense, I mean, it's got to be Burton, I think. No. I think it's going to be Gesicki. I think I changed my mind there. Just because, yeah, I just think he's different compared to any other tight end that they've had recently. And I don't think there's a worry about his durability or his worry about what his role is going to be. I think they've really been looking for that vertical threat at the position, and the fact that he's a tight end in name only, I think also kind of factors into this as well, because they now have, quality personnel that can handle the dirty work of being an inline tight end, which frees him up to do what he does best. And it's been talked about year in and year out what a true high quality tight end could do in this offense. I don't know if you can consider Gesicki necessarily that, but that also could just be a product of the offenses that he has been in. Before Mike McDaniel came down with the Miami Dolphins, revolutionized that scheme. Then he went to, the New England Patriots and that dumpster fire and everything that came about with that. So I think that this is his first real chance, and he's still, 28, 27 years old. So he's still in the prime of his career and still has a lot of athleticism to utilize. It's just an exciting new aspect to the offense that didn't exist with Uzomah, at least outside of a couple games in that 2021 season. I don't think they got necessarily enough out of Hayden Hurst. Like, he was more of that check down, yard after catch type of player, and obviously Irv Smith didn't work out at all, despite the talent that he had. Gesicki is a better athlete than all those guys, and he's more proven to reel in passes down the field and really stretch the middle part and the seams in that general area where they need more explosion, to make sure that the outside and the boundaries are clear away so they can get back to throwing deep bombs to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So just his presence in the slot and, maybe detached from the line of scrimmage and maybe sometimes even outside, the ways that he's been a proven commodity at multiple positions and can high point the ball like very other few tight ends in the league combine that with a quarterback like Joe Burrow who can place it on a dime down the field and have this brand new type of proven weapon at the position, I think is very exciting. Can open up everything for the offense.
So you stole my thunder. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Especially with that last minute pivot. I was like, no. But no, I'm in agreement with you, man. I kind of had this epiphany this week where I'm like, man, even let's say in those instances where the line doesn't hold up against pressure, that sort of thing, that's a quick, guys are on me. I got, boom, get it out and get it to Gesicki. Let him get those yards after catch plays like Hayden Hurst. We've seen some ebbs and flows and positives and negatives, particularly when we're talking about postseason play with the Bengals and their struggles scoring touchdowns instead of kicking field goals. This is a player that helps you achieve the former, right? Right? The former? Yeah, scoring touchdowns. So I think in a lot of those respects, that's where his high impact is going to be. And oh, by the way, we talked about it earlier with Burton and that entire crew, the interchangeability of spots for these players and not being locked in when this guy is out on the field. Oh, he's going to be right here. And this is the route tree that he's pretty much always going to run, or this is where he's going to be, in terms of where his route is completed. And so we can kind of game plan against that. The ability to move Gesicki around, the ability to move the others around with him in different spots keeps a defense on its heels, keeps it guessing a bit more than really the last couple years that the Bengals have shown out there. And I think not only, there might be a little bit of a ramp up between getting the rhythm and timing between Burrow and he down because they're new together. But I think down the stretch and in those division games, potentially if the Bengals make the postseason, this is where a player like that pays huge dividends and is a nice safety blanket for Joe Burrow.
And who knows? Maybe he will be the first tight end that actually gets re-signed off of one of these deals. But I think just the way that they have attacked the tight end room this offseason speaks to how they kind of want to build it out for the future. And we'll see if he's a part of that. I'm gonna try not to steal your thunder this time, so we can go in snake order if you want to go next.
No, go for it.
Well, I backfired on myself because I was genuinely going to go Burton first so I can go with a veteran on defense. Now I have to go against what I said. I'm going to go a veteran on defense this time.
You can change your mind, man. I mean, it's not a big deal.
All a man has is his word, and I've broken it. So, I have to earn that back. But I think the fact that Geno Stone was the first guy added this offseason, he's kind of gotten lost in the cycle of Go ahead. No, stop. No. Go ahead. I'll think of someone else. I'm
kidding. Go.
I want to hear your analysis here.
No. Go for it.
The safety room was a mess last year, right? Everyone knew it. It was a failed experiment, and I really do think that Geno Stone, we talked about it before it even happened. It just made so much sense for why he would be a great addition here, and the profile of his career and how he kind of ascended as a starter in a defense that was so dominant, and the fact that he has experience against the teams that the Bengals are going to play the most. And when he had his most productive seasons, when he was actually out there for significant snaps, and he was relied on to make all these post-snap adjustments and coverage shifts and the things that they couldn't do last year because they didn't trust their safeties. And the fact that they didn't do a lot of cornerback this offseason in terms of addressing, maybe giving DJ Turner to legitimate veteran competition, I think it speaks to how confident they are with this new group of safeties. I say new because, new in quotation marks, because Jordan Battle is still there. Von Bell's essentially back in the defense that he was his best at. So Geno Stone is the true new addition to this group, but he's going to play probably the most important role in terms of just making sure that the top of the defense has a cap on it. And that just wasn't the case last year. It was like throwing Mentos in a Diet Coke can. It was explosive play after explosive play. And that was their biggest thing that they needed to stop, which is why they addressed it first. So him being like the first free agent signing, I feel like people have kind of stopped talking about him. But if he is that same player, which obviously is a risk because that was his first real season as a starter, if he is that similar caliber player, he doesn't have to get 6 interceptions or 7 interceptions again, but if he can just maintain his zones and just be in the right place and communicate before and after the snap with Bell or Battle, whoever else is out there, it'll do wonders for the defense and it'll do wonders for the cornerbacks as they try to get that room solidified.
Even just limiting some of the big plays, right? And getting the young cornerbacks in order, whether that's Bell, whether that's Battle, making sure that Taylor Britt, DJ Turner, now Dax Hill in that mix, making sure that they are lined up where they need to be and the defense is aligned in a good way. By the way, that was a big thing with Bates and Bell. Having Bell back is a big deal, because Bates and Bell, it was said, did a lot of help in lining up the linebackers in front of them as well.
Yeah.
And making sure that, everybody was in the right place. So yeah, I mean, Stone was one of the ones I was considering here. So I do like this one a lot. Even I'll give this one an honorable mention from Peter Neefus, Austin McNamara. If that goes that route, and Dan the Man kind of tagged on that, a nice comment. Even if McNamara pushes Robbins to be better, he'll have an impact. McNamara, if he does win the job, look, this is only a guy that's 3 to 5 snaps that played in a game potentially in terms of kicking the football, but there have been the last 2 seasons major field position disparities in important games and that sort of thing. So I'll give an honorable mention to that one. There, I like that. I like the Geno Stone pick. I'm gonna go again a little bit low hanging fruit, because he was one of the bigger free agency signings of this season here, this offseason, and that's Sheldon Rankins. There is a reason that the Cincinnati Bengals have coveted this guy since the draft. They wanted him years ago before the Saints got him. They wanted him in 21 before he bolted to the Jets, and they pursued him again this year. There is a reason. They love his skill set. They love his ability to rush the passer from the interior, and the Bengals desperately want to recreate what they had with Larry Ogunjobi, BJ Hill, and the group in them, and of course DJ Reader in there too. But they desperately want to recreate a rotation, and again, kind of like what they're trying out with the wide receivers on offense, mix and match, interchange, get guys in there that you can generate pressure from a lot of different spots. And oh, by the way, we talked about this earlier. Take some pressure off of Trey Hendrickson to be the one-man show, the one-man wonder. Granted, Hubbard's made some good plays, but he wasn't 100% either last year in terms of health. When he's a solid pass rusher, solid player. But being able to get that from the interior, I think, is critical for any team. And in this division, the quarterbacks that they face, I think that is going to be a must-have for the Bengals. And I think Rankins, even if he gives you half a dozen sacks this year, I mean, it's not eye-popping stuff, but pretty good numbers, generates good pressure, that's going to make a huge impact on the overall output of the defense.
Yeah, and I think like highest impact in terms of just like production, I think that can easily be Sheldon Rankins for both sides of the ball. You could even, like the word visible impact, I think also really applies to him, because you're going to see how much he impacts the game in regards to pressuring the quarterback, which then makes the job for the secondary a lot easier and just makes the lives of the defensive line a lot easier. And I think that's where Rankins' impact is going to be, because now they have like a true pass rushing 3 technique, which hasn't been the case since Larry Ogunjobi. And we've talked about it. We both believe that Rankins to be a more consistent and productive pass rusher compared to that. So he's arguably the best 3 technique that they've had since Geno Atkins. It's just a matter of if, Rankins's, peak and prime of his career is going to continue into Cincinnati now that he is, I think, officially 30 years old and whatnot. So I think he's going to have the most visible impact for sure in keeping BJ Hill fresh, making sure that he's in the right role. And then you got Chris Jenkins. So you feel confident about your top 3 defensive tackles, where even with DJ Reader last year, like if the third guy was Zach Carter, that was still kind of a weakness. And to just give us an alternative on offense, like, I think Burton is still like the clear rookie here in terms of, we don't know if Amarius Mims is going to start week 1. He might actually push Trent Brown for that competition because he is getting reps now, but we know Burton's going to play out of the gate, and everything that we talked about with him prior to that, the way that they can line him up on the inside and outside, he's got a proven skill set of just stretching the defense and keeping cornerbacks and safeties honest and just making sure that more space is created for what this offense wants to be. Like, that impact is going to be, massive.
Yep. Well, those are our biggest newbies. We did do one on each side of the ball. I did 2 vets. You did 2 veterans too, right? Yeah. So yeah. That doesn't mean that the rookies won't have their impact. They will, but hey, this is a pretty stacked team, and the Bengals went after some guys specifically in free agency for a reason and for high profile roles, and that's what we think they're going to play this year. Let's drop the mic and get on out of here. We're coming in on an hour. What do you have for us on this Memorial Day Eve? Memorial Weekend Eve? I don't know what the proper terminology is, but what do you got for us on our way out, John?
I would like to own up to something that I was wrong in assuming, even like 3 years ago. But I remember when Jake Browning was signed, or at least claimed off of waivers, it was right before the Minnesota Vikings Week 1 game, and he was with the Vikings, right? And there was a lot of speculation regarding, oh, did the Bengals just sign this guy because
Oh
he
yeah,
was with the Vikings, right? And like he
yeah.
just knows the playbook, or just getting him from information. And I was of the opinion that that seemed like too much, like it was probably more of a coincidence because they needed a body at quarterback on the practice squad. Well, Brian Callahan just basically proved me wrong. He was on a podcast with Bussin' with the Boys, which I think is hosted by Taylor Lewan. It's a Titans-centric podcast, so of course he's the new Titans coach, so he was getting to know those guys. And he was asked about, the rise of Jake Browning last year, and I'm going to read like a direct quote from how his career with the Bengals started. Quote, I mean, we stole him off the practice squad before he played Minnesota in 2021, and we brought him in to ultimately sort of flush him for information. He came in and we liked his tape, and we didn't bring him in just for that. We thought he was a good player, but that's just how the league works. You cut guys loose, and we played him week 1, so we signed him. He comes in and starts, and it's like, hey, this guy's really smart, end quote. So, yeah, there's Callahan just basically saying, no, we brought him in because we wanted information on our next opponent, which makes sense. Yeah, and but I think the fact that he stuck around for, now going on 3 years and earned a 2-year contract to it itself, I think both sides were true. They did see potential in developing him as a practice squad guy, and it just happened to be playing. His former team was the team that they were going to play week 1, and they ended up winning that game in overtime thanks to a keep turnover and everything. So it was probably a little bit of the best of both worlds. But I remember like really pushing back on the narrative that no, he's only here because they played the Vikings week 1. Get out of here. Like I think they really wanted him as a practice squad guy. It turns out it's probably a little bit of both, but mainly because they wanted intel.
Didn't last year, and I can't remember the player's name. Was it last year or the year prior? Didn't they sign a defensive back that was formerly with the Chiefs right before they played the Chiefs? And of course, your mind goes there. And I look. I mean, I think, and I'll piggyback on this as my mic drop because I think it's an interesting topic. You like, of course, the main thing is this guy can play, right? And we could use this guy in some capacity on our team, be it as a backup, role player, whatever the case may be. But this is a league, as you know, and as we have seen sometimes in illegal fashions, teams look for edges any way they can get them. And if that is by bringing in a guy the week before, a couple of weeks before you end up playing a team, particularly one that you need to leapfrog in the division, you need to leapfrog in the playoff standings, you need to get past in the playoffs, that sort of thing, they're going to bring these guys in and they're going to say, hey, what should we be expecting? And there may be even at the time, depending on if it's a waiver situation or whatever the case may be, there may be a preemptive conversation about like, hey, we're thinking about bringing you in. Part of that process is going to be to tap you for some knowledge. I don't know. That's speculation on my part, but it wouldn't surprise me to know that those preemptive conversations occur on onboarding some of these guys as you enter a week in which you play their former team.
It's even deeper than that. There have been some cases where like teams will bring in like draft prospects just to get intel on other draft prospects that they're interested in. Yeah. Like I think it was the case
like
this year.
And stuff.
Exactly. Like so the Bengals obviously drafted 2 Ole Miss guys and they brought in Dijon Anthony for like an official top 30 visit. And it wouldn't have surprised me if they were, asking about Cedric Johnson, who they drafted even ahead of him in the 6th round, and Anthony was in the 7th round. So it's like teams' intentions are not always clear, but the more that you kind of see the stuff, the more you can kind of read between the lines of what's really the agenda here. So it's always fun learning that information.
And it's the old 2 birds with 1 stone thing, right? I mean, if you can get a guy in here that you think can fill out your roster, help you out in a specific on-field way, and oh, by the way, help you prep for an upcoming opponent. I mean, if you can get that edge, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? But good bringing that up, John. That's an interesting dynamic. And Callahan, I mean, he's always been. I don't want to say like overly honest or anything, but I mean he's a pretty forthright guy, it seems, especially in interviews. So I think he's not afraid to kind of speak it how it is, and you got to respect him for that. But good luck to him, just not against the Bengals this year, and we'll see how the Titans do in their first year under Callahan. But the Bengals play them late in the year. That'll be a pretty good game, I think. this year, but we'll see what happens. He is John Sheeran. I'm Anthony Cosenza. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, part of the Believe podcast network on the Believe in Cincy audio channel, along with Talking Football with Bengal Jim and friends. Matt and Willie no ball. Is it Willie and Matt no ball? Matt and Willie no ball. Regardless, both of them no ball. And that's with Matt Minnick, the coach, Matt Minnick, and Willie Lutz. And then, of course, you have the other show on our slate, 3 and Out with Jason and Kevin. They do a great job, and their videos, along with ours, can be found on our YouTube channel, and you could subscribe to that channel underneath John at the bottom right of, if you're looking at a video of ours, the bottom right, click that Orange and Black Insider show icon, click the subscribe button, click the bell, do all the things that you need to do to be a good subscriber to our YouTube channel. We appreciate that. You can also go give a like to the Cincy Jungle Facebook page. We stream live there. You can also get all the articles that we put up on that stream there, so you can check that out. And of course, on a variety of Twitter accounts, we stream live there too. So thank you, everybody. We've got a lot of people tuning in again on a variety of different platforms. We appreciate that. We're going to try and get you some special guests coming up here in the coming weeks, more shows from us and the rest of the channel crew there. We appreciate the support. Go back and resubscribe if you're on the audio side. You need to go resubscribe to the Believe in Cincy podcast channel. John, happy Memorial Day weekend to you. And again, I said at the onset of the show, Memorial Day is about specific people and a specific reason. So keep that in mind on this Memorial Day weekend as you're hanging with friends, family, all of that. We are afforded that freedom by specific people, and we thank them on this Memorial Day weekend. John, I hope the Reds get a win for you tonight, my friend. Keep that streak alive.
See you guys.
Take care.